845, Varsity, man up. It's game time, everybody stand up. From my town to yours, we ready for sure.
Justin Rodriguez here with the Varsity 845 Football Podcast with my co-host Kevin Gleason. We're going to do the drill, you know it. We're going to talk about last week's games, move on to this week's games, and have some fun in between. So Kevin, how are you doing today?
Good, J-Rod. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks for asking. Last week, some pretty convincing wins all around. I'm looking at some of the scores. 62 points for Newburgh, 60 for Cornwall, 51 for Highland, 45 for Middletown, 56 for Marlborough, and of course, the old 77er, Burke 77, Red Hook 28.
It's funny because, you're talking about the NFL being an offensive league and a pass-happy league and teams putting up points, and defenses being at such disadvantage without being able to really play, hands-on defense and all the rules being predicated on improving offenses. But I just wonder, is there any of that going on at the high school game too now? Or as I kind of alluded to in a story I wrote for our preview about how offenses are just so intricate now, and quarterback plays better, the skill position players are better, just put up more points now because I think these kids at a younger age are taught how to play quarterback, how to run the spread, how to run the pistol. By the time they get to the high school level, they know how to do all this stuff, and it's becoming more and more challenging. I was talking to some defensive people about it, like Mike Conley, Bernie Conley. They said it's becoming more and more challenging to stop these guys on offense. And I just wonder if it's kind of trickling down to the high school level. You see all these huge numbers being put up by teams.
Well, I think that's part of it, the offensive schemes and everything like that. The other thing too is, I don't know if the football in Section 9 is as deep. So that's not to put Section 9 down, but like I said, if you look at some of these games, most of the games were blowouts this week. Chester 48, Roscoe 7, Monroe 49, Kingston 12, Newburgh 62, BC 7. So you have Highland 51, Rondout 7, and J-Rod's so-called Game of the Week. Cornwall 60, Monticello 6, Middletown 45, Pine Bush 8, Marlborough 56, Dover 7. So that's just the way it's going.
Just a disparity, I think, between the certain level, the upper levels of the divisions and the lower levels. There's just more of a disparity than there probably should be.
Right. Red Hook played, I believe, without its starting quarterback. Burke was up 50-0 at halftime. They started putting freshmen and sophomores in the third, and I think those kids played all of the fourth quarter. So
that's good to hear. That's that's the only thing that always jumps out when you just see the scores. You don't know exactly how the game, was played by the team that was head by a lot. Were they playing their subs regularly, or were they running vanilla plays, or were they actually trying to pound the team into submission?
Well, like I said, from what I understand, Red Hook was okay with it. So we'll move on. Like I said, it was J-Rod's Bust of the Week, the so-called Game of the Week. Highland 51, Rondout 7. I thought it'd be a little closer. And I did want to mix it up with the Game of the Week, get some Class B schools in there. But Highland was very impressive, older, with Carl Relier, coach calling the shots, and they have all that talent. So that was a big win. Talk
about payback, poor Rondout, I think they lost a lot of people to graduation. It just seems like, Highland was rare to go here.
Yeah, that was a game we were both at, that semifinal. Rondout blows the lead, Highland comes back, then Rondout wins. But Highland playing at 5-0. Matter of fact, I had somebody on Twitter today, Justin Rod 845, follow me. That's right, Justin Rod 845, follow me, and tell all your friends too. Also, giving me some little problems because I don't have Highland in my top 10.
It's a tough 10. I saw the 10, and it's not easy to sneak into that, to be honest with you.
And they're asking about Marlborough 3-2. I understand. I'm going to say it. I think Marlborough's a better team. We will find out soon. Marlborough having lost to Walkill and Cornwall.
Absolutely, you can't go by record, and when you're talking about losing, tough non-league game.
We're going to go into some AA action, but before that, it was the game I was at last week. Port Jervis 40, Goshen 35. Goshen up 14-0 in the first quarter. They look good. It's the best I've seen Goshen in a while. Then they give up a 34 spot in the second quarter. I said, Goshen's going away. to Goshen's credit, they came out firing in the second half, and they almost win the game. Port Jervis escapes. Justin Drew with the pick at the goal line in the pitch black, because it was a 4 o'clock game, no lights.
Yeah, what a game, huh? It had to be wild, just how everything unfolded and the twists and turns, and then they're playing in darkness. I mean, was there any talk at all to suspending that thing?
I didn't hear any, but I was wondering if I was thinking, hey,
late in the game.
And I'm sure if the coaches and the kids want to play, but like I said, that ball went up there, and even Justin Drew said, I kind of lost it, and then I even thought Goshen, not trying to play OC, you pull a trick play there, hide the ball on him,
the old hidden ball trick.
Put it in like your jersey or something.
Yeah, leave it to J-Rod to come up with a little trickeration, when darkness falls.
Put it under the kid's jersey and just take off down the sideline.
If there's ever a time to do it, that would seem to be the appropriate time.
So Port, after falling behind to Poughkeepsie, big in the first half, they came back. They're 2-3, 1-0 in the division, not in bad shape. You got both teams have Saugerties, which is struggling. You'll give them that win. Might not be as easy as we think. And then New Paltz, who I think is going to be tough.
I love the fight out of Port. I just love the fight out of Port. I mean, it's reminded of some of those old Port teams that you had to punch in the mouth about 50 times to get them on the canvas. And this Wesley Schools had a great quote. I thought he just said, we play some crazy games, and they do too, and they're never out of it. They play nutty games when they're ahead and blowing a lead, and then they play nutty games when they're behind and coming back. But they've been already involved in 2 or 3 or 4 crazy games,
and Wesley Schools is actually the backup. Noah Nessel was hurt in the Middletown game.
Right.
Wesley we first saw when he was a freshman at the Erie Bell game on Thanksgiving Day. And ever since, I've said it way too many times, Wesley Schools was in session against Goshen with those 3 rushing touchdowns. But he's only a junior.
He's only a junior. Talking to Coach Polanis before the season, because I previewed that class, and he was saying how he had 2 good quarterbacks, and he was going to kind of move Schools around a little bit. He's being a little coy about how he's going to use them. But now it looks like quarterback. He
had a nice game in the Erie Bell game, so he's a real solid player. We're going to go to Double-A. Division 2, because there were 2 big games. Minisink over Washingtonville. 2014 puts Minisink 2-0 in the division. Washingtonville 0-2. That was a big win for Minisink, running the ball. Like I said, that's a big win. Washingtonville goes to 0-2. Minisink playing the way I think they should be, hard-nosed.
Yeah, Minisink's really getting it together now, it seems. They're on a little bit of a run. The only slip-up was against Monroe, which is hardly categorized as a slip-up. Minisink's they're getting it all rolling. They have a lot of speed, obviously. Sessa got a good quarterback. They're playing. Their offensive line is pretty sturdy. Defense is playing well. So, they're definitely becoming a team to be reckoned with.
And Warwick coach Greg Sirico might have to learn, use a new saying, how you like me now. Because at Camp of Champions in June, I heard from a lot of, Warwick doesn't look that good. Now Warwick is 5-0. So that's, Kevin, in case you were wondering why he would say how you like me now.
I kind of picked up on that. I appreciate the interpretation.
14-6 over Roosevelt. They were 14-7, I believe.
It was 14-6. I mean, you insist that it was 14-7, but
they were down 6-0 at halftime.
We reported it as 14-6, so it better have been 14-6.
They gutted it out.
They did gut it out, and that's Warwick for you, though. They just know how to win. They've known how to win for a long time.
How about Newburgh 62, VC 7, Anthony DeBose? You can't hold them down anymore. 175 yards on something like 8 carries. Aaron Forbes with I think caught a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. So I really think Newburgh's coming on.
And it sounds like this kid Washington, the quarterback, is starting to mature into a pretty nice signal caller too.
Yeah, he's a good kid. He's dangerous, and I think we'll talk about Newburgh a little more later. I think they're starting to hit their stride. Monroe, as we expected, 49-12 over Kingston. Middletown 45, Pine Bush 8. Jordan Bryan has arrived, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns. A sophomore who played JV. He actually transferred in August to play basketball He told me this week a school in Largo, Maryland, recruited him to play after seeing him with his AAU team, the BC Eagles. They recruited him to play down there, and he just didn't like it. And he came back to Middletown. He had to sit out to get his practices, and he was rolled out 2 weeks against Kingston, and we're going to talk about him later. But that's 281 and 5 touchdowns. That's legit.
And he's going to help Jim Kelly's basketball team.
Oh, yeah, he's a good basketball player. He's been on the team since 8th grade. Last year he was ineligible a little with academics, but I've known Jordan since his 8th grade year. And I've seen him around. I've talked to him. He's a really nice kid, and we'll be hearing a lot more from him.
Good for him. He's put up, what, 500 and something yards now in 2 games?
Yep. Hey, another thing I want to mention, too, we don't cover Pine Plains. They're in Dutchess County. They beat Eldred 20-0. They snapped a 13-game losing streak. They actually, it was their first win since last year. There was a car accident, tragedy. One of their football players was killed.
That's right.
And, they've really taken their lumps.
Sure.
And so they win that game, so we'd like to give them, a special shout-out. Another one, Sullivan West, 5-0, down 12-0 to Millbrook. At halftime, they come back, win 20-12. Sullivan West takes control of Class C with just 4 teams, Liberty and Tri-Valley being the other 2, along with Millbrook. Sullivan West, that was a very impressive effort.
Very impressive. They're getting ready for a big one this weekend, correct?
They have a big game. Yep, we'll talk about the Highland game. It's a non-league game, but it should be a war. We had New Paltz 31, Saugerties 20, so that gives New Paltz, that's a Division II game, so they're 1-0.
Yep.
Who do you like in that division? If it's come right now, we got Port and New Paltz 1-0, Goshen and Saugerties 0-1. Who are you going to take in that division?
I just, boy, I'll tell you, I just think New Paltz Port's going to be a great game. I'd have to go with Port. I really would, because Port's been battle tested. It's hard to go against New Paltz because they've won so many big games and they're so accustomed to winning there. And Tom Tegler, the job that he's done has been remarkable. But I just have a feeling about Port. That they're going to find a way to win this game.
The other game too, in 2 teams, Walk Hill and Cornwall picked up their first wins in Class A Division I. Cornwall 60-6 over Monticello, and then Walk Hill went into Poughkeepsie, and they had a little bit of a tough time there at halftime, and they pulled it out. So those 2 teams are 1-0, obviously on a collision course in that upper division, Division I, Class A Division I.
Absolutely. I can't make heads or tails out of Poughkeepsie, to be honest with you. I see some of the scores, and it seems like they've had moments or periods of really good play, mixed in with periods of poor play. It just seems like they're inconsistent.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the depth. I believe they're down some numbers, but I talked to Rory Boyce before that game, and he was definitely nervous, as he should, preparing well, and he was right. Poughkeepsie gave him a little bit of a fight there, and they pulled it out. Shout out to Connor Lee, pick 6 for Walk Hill 2 weeks in a row. So that's a nice effort by the Walk Hill defense, which is always a tough operation. Marlboro 56, Dover 7. Marlboro obviously, coming on strong. And Livingston Manor won their 3rd game in a row. I think I picked against them all 3 times. They beat Pauling 47-20.
Good for Manor, absolutely good for Manor.
And Chester rolling along 48. Roscoe 7. Vinny Alloy becomes career passes. He goes to number 2 for career touchdown passes. I believe he's at 55. He just passed Scott Ricketson, Kingston's offensive coordinator, who played for Kingston. I think he graduated in '98. I think Vinny has 55 now, and Mike White has the record for 77. So
we always describe Vinny the same way, in terms of just an economical quarterback, where sometimes he'll throw 8 passes and complete 7 of them, and 5 will be for touchdowns. This kid's terrific.
I think it was 5 of 6 2 weeks ago with 5 touchdowns.
He's terrific, and he's shown an awful lot in 2 years. I mean, he had that 7 touchdown game last year.
Yep, Mariah in the state semifinals.
In the state semis.
Touchdown, Vinny was born.
This kid is fabulous, and it's going to be fun to watch him down the stretch. I mean, the question is Chester a team that can get back to the Carrier Dome? I know that we're not going to talk to the coaches about that because they won't want to go that far ahead. But you and I could talk about that. I mean, do they have it do they have enough to get back to Syracuse?
You know what? I think a lot depends on what they see in the state playoffs.
Yeah,
They
it's
beat
hard. It's hard
Tuckahoe
to
for the
say.
first time. They'll go through Section 1. The road could end right there. But if they get by Section 1, when they play that like Plattsburgh area team, it could be the Mariah job part 2. They did them pretty well. They did the job on them, and like I said, it could be. So that's the way I see it. I really haven't done my research on what Section 1 has.
Right.
But to me, that's the game. You get past that game, and then it becomes the Mariah job.
When is that?
part 2.
Tuckahoe or Dobbs normally? Is that Dobbs?
One of those teams. Yeah, I think Dobbs might be a C.
They're C now.
But
Okay.
I think Haldane's another team. But, you know, like I said, Chester will have a chance in that Section 1 game.
Sure, no doubt.
So that was a good look back at last week. Like I said, some great performances, some great games, and we're going to come right back and then look at this week's games. Okay, welcome back to the Varsity 845 Football Podcast. Justin Rodriguez here with my man Kevin Gleason. So we're going to look at this week's game. Some, of course, we touched on earlier in the show. The big game, Monroe at Middletown, 7 o'clock Friday. I'll be there. Looking forward to it. Both teams 4-1, 2-0 in Class AA. We probably never thought this would be a game that would get this much attention, but kudos to Middletown. They've done a wonderful job.
Yeah, how about it? It's good to see Middletown, get its act together football-wise. I mean, it's always had so much talent there, and not always been easy to get enough kids out for that team and keep them eligible. And I know over the years they've struggled in that regard, but not in the past few years now that they're really getting it together and they're keeping kids eligible, which is nice. And they really, really seem to be getting something special going over there this year.
I'm going to put you on the spot. We know about Monroe's defense, which you've spoken very highly of in past weeks. They shut down a few weeks ago Joe Sessa and Deontay Moore. The next test was Aaron Forbes, who I think you said they would shut down. He ran for 226 yards.
I still don't remember that quote, but I'm going to have to take your word for it on that.
So now their next test, and they're always up for a test, that defense,
yes, sir,
is Jordan Bryan, the breakout celebrity. 281 yards against Kingston, against Pine Bush last week with 5 touchdowns, over 200 against Kingston the previous week. Do you think they bottle up Jordan Bryan?
I have to plead slight ignorance here, J-Rod, although you've probably, heard me plead ignorance enough to know that you're accustomed to it. But I got to tell you, I haven't seen this kid run. All I've seen is the numbers, and obviously these are eye-popping numbers, and this kid has apparently a pretty good feel for how to run a football and great speed, I'm assuming.
6'1", 205, great
6'1", 205, great speed, great cutting ability, can recognize a hole. He apparently has some great qualities, and he's only a sophomore, which is remarkable. So, yeah, I'm going to assume that this kid's going to get his. He's going to get 100, 150 yards, but I'm not sure if that's going to be nearly enough for Middletown. That's the question. I mean, they're going to need a lot more than his yardage.
Okay. Well, I think, I think, I don't think he'll put Forbes' numbers up, but I agree with you. I don't think he'll get shut down like, Monroe did to Menacing Valley. I'm gonna give him 100 or so yards, but more importantly, who do you like in the game?
Well, it's hard to pick against Monroe, obviously. For Middletown, this is just such a gigantic leap up in class for them. They did the job in Kingston, and they did the job starting it all off with a great comeback win over Port. But it's just, you're talking about one of the best teams in the state, presumably here in Monroe. So I can't imagine Monroe losing this game, but I can imagine if Middletown giving it a pretty quality effort here.
I'm going to take Monroe as well. And keep in mind, if Middletown loses this game, it would set up most likely the last week of the season, week 8. They would play at Newburgh, and the winner goes to the playoffs. That's what that would set up. But again, you know what? Middletown, again, they've come a long way. And you know what? The thing is with Middletown, they're not just happy to be here. So
Yeah.
I don't want to paint that picture.
No, and I'm not dissing them in any way. I am not disrespecting Middletown. I mean, I'm just saying that I don't think Monroe is going to lose to anybody other than Newburgh on their schedule. I mean, it's not, it's not an alarming, wild statement. I mean, it's it's pretty probably something that a lot of people will share, that it's all about Monroe and Newburgh in that classification.
Okay, another big AA game in Division II, Valley Central at Roosevelt. Both teams have one loss in the division. VC 0-1, Roosevelt 1-1. Roosevelt coming off a 13, I think it was 14-6, or can you confirm for me? They lost to Warwick last. What was it? 14-7.
14-7, I think it was.
Okay, so they lost to Warwick. It was 14-7. VC coming off the Newburgh job. Anthony DeBose 62-7.
14-6, I should say.
14-6. Sorry about that. So losers probably in deep trouble for the playoffs. I still think that's going to be a wacky division.
Yep,
But
I agree.
But I'm going to take Roosevelt in this game. I know after that beating, VC took, they are resilient, but going to Roosevelt, I think it's going to be another tight, kind of like that Warwick game. But I'm going to take Roosevelt in this game. They have I believe like a double wing T. They're running there. They have this Struther at running back. I'm going to take Roosevelt in this game, which would probably eliminate VC from playoff contention.
Yeah, I mean, the Newburgh 62-7 over VC just jumps off the page, because it just goes to show you that, when you're talking about AA football, there's one level of it, and there's a slightly, not a slightly, but a marginally higher level with Monroe and Newburgh. I mean, VC's a terrific team. They really are. And I was surprised that they got beat like they did by Newburgh. It just tells me that Newburgh's really, really right there with Monroe Woodbury, as they showed, the previous week. I think VC has a real big shot here. I really do. I'm going to pick them. I know Roosevelt, would probably be favored by a bit, but I think VC's just seeing what they've done, coming back from games all year, just the toughness that they have. I think they're going to really, really find a way to come back big and get back in the win column here.
And speaking to Newburgh, I really think, and this is a credit to them, I still think now they're starting to hit their stride. I don't think they had hit their stride even in Monroe. So
right.
I will, I'd like to see what they do at Pine Bush. If that could be a big job there on Pine Bush. But the other big game in AA Division II, Washingtonville 0-2 in the division, Warwick 1-0. That game is at Warwick, and I still, again, this division I thought it'd be a little trickier. So if it's going to be tricky, Washingtonville has to beat Warwick.
It's time. Yeah, Washingtonville does have to beat Warwick. There's no doubt. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. That said, Washingtonville, I picked them to win the division. But guess what? Time to dust myself off, because I just jumped off that bandwagon. I'm going to take Warwick.
Don't tell me you're jumping off the Don Clark bandwagon, because that doesn't seem possible. Quite honestly.
They lost two tight games to Roosevelt.
No doubt.
And Minisink. And this is going to be a tight game.
Roosevelt was what, 14-7, I think, and Minisink was
2014, was it? Or
yeah, I mean, so we're talking about
they're
two
there.
Touchdowns from two wins there. This should be a great game. There's no doubt about it. Warwick's had just coming off a big test. I mean, but Warwick just seems to be so solid. They got they can run it, they can throw it a little bit. This Egan kid's a pretty big target. One of our podcast favorites, and I don't know. I think Warwick's going to find a way to win this game, but Washingtonville won't surprise me if they take this down to the wire.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game, and I'm going to take Warwick as well. New Paltz at Cornwall, Class A. It's not a league game, but I think this could be perhaps a playoff matchup, maybe in the semifinals, maybe even the finals, depending what New Paltz but. I'm going to take Cornwall. They've scored 60 points the last 2 weeks. I don't know if they'll put a 60 spot up on New Paltz, but I think they will win comfortably. So how about New Paltz, Cornwall? Cornwall scored 60 points each of the last 2 weeks. And, I don't see them doing that against New Paltz, but I do like Cornwall in that game.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Cornwall is just impossible to pick against right now. They're flying through their regular season schedule, and you know they seem to be the type of team that can wind up in Carrier Dome.
On Saturday, you have Marlboro at Red Hook. Marlboro wins, that clinches playoff spots for them, and Highland, they'll both be 2-0, having to play each other, and that would eliminate Red Hook and Rondout officially. They're basically done as we speak. Now, Marlboro and Burke, they like to compete. They're already competitors, and you know, Burke, we had talked about it earlier, put 77 on Red Hook. I hope Coach Ward and his crew out there, they don't try to one-up Burke and put like 91 on him.
No, I hope not too, for Red Hook's sake. You know, I already feel for him, you know, being on the bad end of a 77-point effort by Burke. Yeah, Marlboro put 56 on Dover, you know, and Marlboro obviously score a lot. And it's not the only time they scored a lot of points this season. I don't know, I feel for Red Hook. You know, that's a tough back-to-backer.
Yeah, it certainly is. Another game, Chester at Manor. Chester, the Class D, 4-time defending champ. Twice they've gone to the state final in those years. I'm going to mention Manor because they didn't have a team last year. They start off 0-2. They've won 3 in a row. So hats off.
Good for Manor, absolutely.
But we're going to take Chester in that game.
I think so.
Okay. The other game, too, it's on Friday night, is a non-league game, Highland at Sullivan West. Sullivan West coming off that Millbrook win. Highland had beaten Millbrook in a thriller just a few weeks back. I just think that'll be an entertaining game. I'm going to take Highland, but in Sullivan West, it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough.
Yeah, it seems like Sullivan West beat Millbrook a little more convincingly than Highland did, for what that's worth.
They were down 12-0 at halftime.
But they came back and won by a touchdown, and whereas Highland, I believe they won by a point, and that was on the field goal with a minute 20 left.
Yeah.
So you know, it sounds like a great game.
I think this week not as many good games, but there are enough good games that we talked about them. Another exciting week. I can't believe it's week 6. With that, we're going to say goodbye. Justin Rodriguez here with Kevin Gleason. Thanks for listening to the Varsity 845 Football Podcast.